was a time early in my broadcast career when women were almost never on the air in any kind of a position in radio or in television. In radio, I remember my boss once saying, people really don't want to listen to a woman's voice on the air. Even back in college, we had people in from the radio industry, and one of my friends asked, what about the role for women? Well, there are behind-the-scenes clerical roles, and you can always do the women's program. Those days have clearly gone away, which they clearly needed to.
Bye.
One of the issues I think that you run into with women, particularly on television, is the issue of you can have a very aged male who's delivering news, but what happens when the woman gets older? We go back to the Christine Crafts case several decades ago from Kansas City, where she lost her job because she was aging, and the station really wanted somebody younger. And that sort of opened the door for the publicity that got. It opened the door for people saying, this really isn't fair. Even today, though, you don't see many females delivering news who are as old as the senior males are. One wonders why. If you look at a 6 o'clock newscast on most local stations, there'll be a male and there'll be a female, but the male will almost always be the lead person. As you face the set, the male will be on the left, the female will be on the right. It's very traditional that way, and one wonders what happens with the impression that's made when the male always takes the lead, when the male seems to be the dominant character. Is there sort of a subtle impression that's made on people that they may not even be aware of what the proper role for women would be? The other issue that came up in sports a few years ago was when women started covering sports. Traditionally, after a game, the interviews took place in the locker room, which was a changing area. Should women be admitted into the locker room? A lot of people had to deal with that issue. And when they got there, how were they treated by the athletes? Were they treated with respect, or were people acting out in a way that today we would view as sexual harassment?
Yes. All right, my name is Erica Bryant. I am a columnist for the Democrat and Chronicle, and I've been at the Democrat and Chronicle newspaper for 14 years. What inspired me to pursue journalism? When I was in high school, I would always read the newspaper. I was kind of like a news nerd, I guess you'd say. And one day I went out and I got the newspaper. We got this Evening Times Union, and there was a picture on the front page of the newspaper of Betty Tyson, and she had her fist in the air like this because she'd just gotten out of jail. And her story was that she was actually a prostitute and had a couple of drug problems, and she had been framed for murdering a Kodak businessman in the 70s. And there was a lot of shady stuff that went into her wrongful conviction. The police beat confession out of her and falsified evidence and all kinds of things. And basically a reporter at the Democrat and Chronicle uncovered all of the malfeasance and all the problems that had gone around that case, and worked very hard and written a bunch of stories that had basically gotten her free. So I saw that and I said, wow, journalism is something that really can make a difference in people's lives and make a difference in the world. And I always loved telling stories and reading stories and investigating things. And so I thought, this looks like the perfect career to pursue. So at what point in my life did I fall in love with it? I would say probably during my internship. Because I had worked on, as I said, I started the elementary school paper. I also worked on my high school paper, and then when I went to college, I came home and I worked an internship. And I highly recommend that anybody who's considering journalism try an internship, because you really have a chance to get your feet wet and try things and write your own stories. And it's a wonderful experience and a good way to get your foot in the door. What obstacles have I faced in journalism industry? Obstacles? One thing is that the journalism industry, the newspaper industry, is contracting. And when I started at the paper, there were 80 reporters, copy editors, and photographers, and now there are fewer than 40. So Rochester is sort of an outlier. I mean, if you look at the top editors across the country, I think that you would see that most leadership positions are held by men, especially white men. So there is definitely a need for more diversity, gender diversity, and racial diversity in newspapers. Have there been any negative circumstances that I've experienced due to being a woman and a woman of color? Certainly. I mean, whenever I write about race-related incidents, pretty much whenever I write about anything sort of race-related or calling for people to look at racial injustices, I'm pretty much guaranteed to get some kind of awful racist email or, name calling and slurs and things like that. But it's not, honestly, it's not pleasant, but it's not that big of a deal. Because I always think, Ida B. Wells, her entire printing press was destroyed by an angry racist mob. So things have improved a lot for journalists of color, and I'm not gonna cry over a couple emails.
My name is Tom Proietti. I'm a resident scholar in media at St. John Fisher College. And I started the communication program at St. John Fisher back in 1968. And then later on, I started the communication program at Monroe Community College in 1985. I spent 27 years at Monroe Community College, in total 45 years between MCC and St. John Fisher. And it's an interesting topic, this whole thing about women in journalism. I was in the newsroom when I was 17 years old at the Democrat and Chronicle in 1963, and I worked in the sports department. There were no women in the sports department, and the only women present in the building, there were no female reporters, no female editors, and a few secretaries to some of the executive editors and the publisher, and that's about it. And then in 1967, I started working at Channel 3 in Syracuse, and there were no women in that newsroom. Let's say I left there in the end of August 1968, and they had just hired their first female. And interestingly enough, she was also African American, and her name was Jackie Robinson. So it was perfect, kind of perfectly timed. So I spent about 4 weeks with Jackie. In essence, she was replacing me, and she was a great young reporter. And she just retired 2 years ago from Channel 3 in Syracuse. Spent a long career there. Women face an awful lot of challenges getting into the journalism business. It's gotten much better, and it's kind of been a steady progression up of not only having more opportunities, but also moving up extensively in the business. It's not an easy career for a woman to get in, and it's not an easy career to advance. It tends to be a career that's cruel to women as far as appearances go. Women get much more likely to be judged than men are on their appearance in this business. Women age and men season, and that kind of capsulized. Men can get away with the aging process, and far more difficult for a woman on camera to get away with that. And that's why when I look at reporters, especially who work for the local or even network news, if you look at the men, they can be almost any age, and they can be almost any shape and any appearance at all. But the women are almost uniformly right across the board. They tend to be taller, thinner, and far more attractive than the common ordinary person. So sadly, we still have an awful lot of that going on. And in this age of finally, this seminal moment coming about with the whole sexual harassment, abuse, assault, whatever you want to call it, this amazing moment taking place in our business, I'm wondering, is this going to transform journalism? I guess we're going to have to wait to see. Moving up the ladder, it tends to become more and more male and more white. And I'm just hoping that this great moment that we're going through right now, that it's causing a great deal of upheaval in the culture. I'm also hoping that my good friend Marshall McLuhan used to say, in breakdown there's breakthrough. When things break down, that's the only time we ever learn anything, and I think we're going through that right now. And maybe we'll just start evaluating people based on talent and not on their color or their gender or their religious beliefs or what college they went to. Let's try to keep it as fair as we can.